What is going on, guys? It's Dan here from the Wolfpack, joined today as well with Matt as well, who's also part of the Wolfpack. Very much a Instagram guy, but does all of the news as well over on Twitter as well. And you've seen him in the flesh a few times now. Done a few live debuts. This is a recorded video, and it's all about Max Kilman being linked stupidly heavily with West Ham for the longest time, but now it looks as though it's all going to happen. So stick around. We're going to talk all about Kilman, and we'll just be just a sec. We're out for blood. So, guys, as you saw from the title, Max Kilman is moving to West Ham. The deal is worth 40 million. It's a very, very good deal for Wolves in terms of PSR because it's pure profit. Maidenhead also get 10%. Could even be 15 to 20. We've not quite figured that out just yet. So if that's something let us know in the comments. But yeah, for sure, very, very impressed with this from Matt Hobbs. The deals already coming in were fantastic, and in my opinion, this is one that still goes into that category instead of being a bit of a calamity like we saw last summer. Players very key to the club leaving and leaving us in a bit of hot water. But as I said earlier, I'm joined with Matt, and
Hello.
we're going to go through all things Max Kilman. So if you're a West Ham fan and you're wondering who you're buying, this video is for you. And if you're a Wolves fan and you want to know all the details about who could come in to replace Max Kilman, in based on our opinion and stats that we found, stick around for that as well. And then right at the end, we're also going to talk about who might take that captain's armband off Max Kilman. So there's loads and loads to get into. But before we start, let's cut straight to the chase with the tweets that have come out. So we tweeted just this 5 minutes ago at the timing of this video, Max Kilman is having his medical this afternoon. So that would have been the 4th of July. And it's all happened very, very fast, hasn't it, Matt?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's very much the case that a deal that has been on the cards this summer. But if you were to ask me sort of before the summer started, I certainly would not have expected Kilman to leave the club. But the sort of with the interest of sort of West Ham and the bid that their first bid they made, and then the bid that Newcastle made, I think the longer this window went on, I think it was sort of adamant that to me that Wolves were going to sell Max Kilman. And at the end of the day, with the bid they've received, I think it was sort of a no-brainer for Wolves with the sort of, as you mentioned, the pure sort of profit they made from it, the sort of fee that, as we'll get on to, a player that sort of isn't playing his best football. I don't think you could really go wrong with it, so I'm really happy with it. It's very much the case that, as I said, I didn't expect it to happen before this summer started. I didn't think Max Kilman would be going anywhere. I thought, Wolves have sort of rejected offers from before, like they rejected Napoli's bid, for example, and I thought Wolves would be quite sort of stern on that. But Wolves had a price this summer, and it was originally meant to be 45, but we've sort of accepted 40, which you can't complain with. And I'm really happy with the deal personally. Yeah, I think it's good business from Wolves.
Nice. So we're going to talk about basically what we think about Kilman, and sort of what the season looked like for him, where he might have struggled in places, and where maybe we can see what Julian Lopetegui's seen enough to spend that amount of money as well. Like, there is a lot of positives about Max Kilman as well, as much as there's a heap of negatives as well. We're just being very honest with our opinions and everything.
Definitely.
So yeah, leave your opinions as well in the comments about Max Kilman as well. That'd be awesome. While you're at it,
Definitely.
like the video, subscribe. We're all over on social media as well. Wolfpack WWFC for our handle. But yeah, I'm going to go straight to what you think of the season, like have Max Kilman's season just gone, Matt.
Yeah,
What do you think? First of all, we'll
yeah.
talk about his positives. Positives
Okay,
first.
okay. As positives, I think there was a spell under O'Neill where I think was playing with real confidence. You look at sort of the win against Chelsea, the win against Tottenham. I'm not just naming wins. Like it was sort of
Mm,
City win. Like the sort of big games we won was Kilman for me played very well in those games. But I think his sort of progressive sort of passes on the ball, his dribbling, at times I think was really good. But
mm,
that's it really. I think as much as I'm being
mm.
quite harsh, I think he doesn't really
Yeah,
score.
move over to negatives,
Yeah,
mate.
like
No
I was
problem.
struggling there if you couldn't tell, but pretty the seasons prior, like there's a lot more, but just sort of this season, like it's tough to
Which
sort
is
of
what
name.
we're going on. It's
Yeah, we
current
will get
form.
to that. Yeah, we're talking his current form, and at the end of the day, he's a player that is playing with, in my opinion, not as much confidence as he once was. And you have seen that effect really. He has certainly struggled at times, and I think for me, negatives wise, I think someone that's such a big bloke, he is like the way he gets bullied by strikers, the way he gets pinned. I think it was Mateta, for example, when we played Palace. I know
Mm,
everyone had a terrible game then, but Mateta, for example, and players like Antonio, players,
yeah.
big strikers, he just really struggles physically. And the worst thing is, like, he's not like a Lissandro Martinez height. He's a big boy. He's not,
Mm,
skin and bones. He's a stocky defender, big defender, very tall. And he just, in my opinion, just didn't use his sort of physical presence enough, didn't almost believe in his physical presence. A lot of the time when we played the back five, he got dragged out, for example, against Man City, against Palace as well. When he was sort of given the instruction to sort of man mark a striker, he almost sort of just didn't disregarded his positioning. And as much
mm,
as he was following the instructions at times, um, without the instructions, he just sort of wandered off and sort of was in his own
mm,
world and left massive gaps in the defence that, for example, Totti, Santi Bueno, Dawson, when he was playing, had to fill. And it just sort of left so much space for runs to make in behind for, like, your sort of clever players like Bernardo Silva who just drift into them pockets. And I just think at times as well, I think he was quite, he just sort of struggled when it comes to sort of his confidence, as I've said. I think, as I've said, dragged out, bullied, etc. And a player that, as much as he did have some good games last season, he was not at all terrible every game. A player that I just think for large parts of the season, when the team was doing quite poorly, for example, the way we ended the season, he really
mm.
was a real sort of, he struggled. And we'll get onto it, but I think a big reason for that was, the fact that he was captain and the pressure that sort of came with.
Definitely. Yeah, so I pretty much echo everything Matt says there. The only thing or the thing I'd probably mention is the fact that he's not very quick on the turn. Um, if
Yeah,
if a player catches him on his standing leg, he's not going to be able to get past. Um,
yeah. If they like spin him,
it's
yeah,
quick. He's not going to be quick enough to get back and
definitely,
actually
yeah,
make the tackle. And sometimes I think there's another thing with Max Kilman is he's guilty of not making the tackle and killing an attack at source.
yeah,
Sometimes
yeah,
he'll be running back towards goal, and then by the time he's got to an area where he does make the tackle, it's
hmm,
almost already too late. And
yeah,
we saw that again. We saw that against United when they played us at home, and they had that last goal, didn't they? It was very
yeah.
much
Kobe Minu's
Kilman's
goal, yeah,
mistake, wasn't it? It was definitely Kilman's
yeah,
mistake because if he just takes him out at the source, even if he got a card for it, you commend him for it because it's so late on in the game. Why are you backpedaling and why are you letting him beat you, so easily? Like it just sometimes his performances were very, very poor. I do a lot of match reviews, and a lot of the times I would be giving Max Kilman negative reviews. I'm sorry, I would. If he played very well, I'd be giving him positive reviews. But I've got to
yeah,
admit, if I think about it, I think his negative performances outweighed his positive performances, and we are going to go over why we think that is, and the biggest one for us is the captaincy. Would you agree with that, Matt?
Yes, I would certainly. I think, as I sort of previously mentioned in this episode, I think the sort of pressure that he was given with captaincy, I think he's just not really the personnel, not really the type of person to sort of accept that. He sort of, I think he was very comfortable with sort of going about his own business. But Lopetegui tried to give him the captaincy to get a more vocal side out of him, and he obviously thought that from that, that would sort of elevate his game. But I think it didn't really. I think it almost put a bit too much pressure on him, and at times he looked quite sort of lost with captaincy on, which is a shame to say. But I do think the role sort of got to him, and I think he just couldn't really hack it. It didn't really, in my opinion, make him more of a leader. It didn't really make him, shouting, etc. Like he wasn't, it didn't really make him command more, as much as
Yeah.
that was probably what he was told to do. For example, whenever we sort of conceded a goal, I never looked at the team and thought, "Oh, there's Kilman getting the boys going." He sort of just trudged back, and I always
100%.
thought it was probably like Lamina or maybe like a Dawson when he was playing, who were
Mm.
the sort of lads picking up the team, going, "Don't worry, lads, keep your heads up," that etc. That type of thing. Even like Sameda, I saw him do it more than Kilman, so that was sort of
Yeah.
a bit of a worry to me. But we'll get on to sort of who we think will be the Wolves captain eventually. But for me, it was always the case. It was always going to be the case, really. When Max Kilman was given captain, a lot of Wolves fans weren't happy with it. I personally wasn't happy with it, and that's just
No.
due to the character he is. We didn't think that someone that's quite a quiet person on like apparently, like, obviously I don't know the guy, but off the pitch apparently and on the pitch, he's quite a sort of keep himself to himself person. Apparently, to be sort of given someone like that captaincy, they're just sort of putting on a persona where they're not. Whereas like when we had previous captains like Connor Cody, like yes, he shouted a lot on the pitch, but he's quite a sociable guy off the pitch, like quite a big character. So it's almost like he was given a role that he just shouldn't have been given, in my opinion. And as I've said, I do think that really affected his performances. It's hard to, I think, at times as well when we did alter to a back five, he really struggled because he didn't have someone like Kilman next. Didn't have someone like Dawson
Doors.
or Kilman next to him. Keep saying Kilman, Dawson or Cody next to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone that sort of has that leadership quality, etc. He just sort of struggled there really, and I think he sort of needed sort of someone that was so commanding next to him, and he was almost given that role, and he couldn't really reciprocate that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I think that obviously we've talked about why that might have been like affecting his performances from what we saw before the captaincy, and it kind of just kind of plays itself out, doesn't it? Really, you look at his performances before, you look at his performances after, and that's got to be something that impacted it. I think the other thing that impacted it, as you were saying, is obviously the players next to him that were injured, that were out of it, the leadership and the way they sort of demand, you know, a back four or back five shape, to sort of just keep it at a certain level, really. And I think sometimes you looked at Kilman to do that, and he was all sixes and sevens trying to figure out where his position was, worrying about what he was doing, and then that left everyone else thinking, "Oh, well, I'm doing," and then you just
Yeah,
had loads of
very
players
true. Yeah,
all in their own brain, all in their own mind, trying to figure out what they're doing, and it never led to anything positive, did it? So,
yeah.
but yeah, I think we've gone over that enough now. I think there's going to be a lot of West Ham fans watching, and if there is, let us know how you feel about this signing. This is we've gone negative straight from the bout, but genuinely that's been his performance under Gary O'Neill.
And I don't really
I'm not
blame
gonna
Gary O'Neill for that.
No, I know, and I'm not gonna say I'm really not gonna say that you haven't got a good signing, because there are some qualities about Kilman that are very, very good.
Which we'll
Um,
get on to
um,
now.
yeah, yeah. So we are gonna look at some percents based on his stats online. Now, these you've got to take with a pinch of salt. These are stats that obviously they are leading from games that they've played, that could be different next season under a different manager, under a different set of players, under all these different circumstances. Could be very very different, and arguably will be different. Um,
Yeah. At the
so
end of the
you
day,
got to take
I watched every match he played. So like, if as much as I like, the players for using FBref, doesn't always paint the full picture. I think to me, I'm always going to argue that the eye test is more important than what the stats are saying. But I think the stats in general do sort of speak volumes at times. And as you
yeah
can see from his sort of the way he sort of progressed the ball, as we said, his dribbling. If you go further down, I saw that his take-ons, for example, and the stats are really good, which doesn't surprise me because he is quite progressive on the ball when he's dribbling. I remember the pre-season goal he scored, I think, against Alvarez or something like that, or Deportivo
mm,
something, where he pretty
mm,
much ran through the whole team. I think that was just as Bruno Lage left
mm.
this pre-season then, and his clearance, his blocks, like when Kilman's on it, he's very
He's in
sort
a
of
bit in,
he is
he's a bit of a no
he is
nonsense, isn't he?
aggressive, yeah, and
Bit of a,
he is aggressive, and that's sort of how he plays. When we said sort of he gets spun, that's because he can be quite aggressive, but
mm,
that's for me his aggressive when it comes to like the way he presses, but I don't think he's an aggressive centre back in general. Like the way he sort of
no,
attacks the ball, the way he sort of got bullied at times, like that's not aggression. Like he's not like a Craig Dawson who West Ham fans especially will know very well.
mm.
He's very much a loves winning headers, loves defending. Like Kilman isn't exactly like that. Kilman's more of a modern day centre back when it comes to very
I
good on
think
the ball,
I
that
think when
type
you
of thing.
look at the I think when you look at West Ham's setup as it is at the moment, very much could change. I think they were after another centre back anyway, even if they buy Kilman apparently, which is very cool for them. Different
Mm-hmm.
back line altogether, which would be interesting. But if you go in on Zuma, Suchek, any other
Mm-hmm.
of their defenders off the top of my head, some of them are very aggressive. Zuma is very aggressive. So if you've
Mm-hmm.
got Zuma next to Kilman,
Yeah,
Kilman does all of the neat footwork, you know, getting your line higher and stuff. If that's something that Lopetegui sees in him and whatever, that's very fantastic. I do think as well what I do like about Kilman, and I've got to say this, before last season when the ball was coming into the box, he was clearing a lot of the chances. He was, and his blocks have been very, very good as well. I
yeah,
think he's cleared the ball off a line a couple of times. So
yeah,
he is very much a last ditch defender sometimes. But
yeah.
I've got to address it's sometimes, guys. This isn't a player that's consistent for this
And that
season, especially.
and that's for me what Max Kilman needs to find, because during his first few seasons at Wolves, he was a lot more consistent than what he has been. Because as
Yeah.
I've already mentioned, he wasn't terrible every game. He was really good for some games, but he just didn't maintain those levels. And during his first few seasons, when he come in the club, he pretty much was very sort of dependable, similar to me what Totti Gomez is like. You sort of
Mm,
know what you're going to get out of him. And
mm,
Kilman, when he was first at Wolves, was very much that for me. You knew that you were always going to get a pretty solid performance out of him. And then some
mm,
games he'd be absolutely brilliant. And you never really got a disaster class from him. But for
mm,
me, this season, it actually has been like there's been more sort of, as you said, negative performances than good performances. So yeah, it's something that he just needs to pick up his form. Maybe he'll flourish under Lopetegui. I don't know, but he didn't particularly do that at Wolves. Um, so it'd be interesting to see, because especially if they play a back four and a high line, as good
mm,
as Kilman can be on the ball, a high line doesn't suit Kilman at all, because runs in behind him, he isn't the quickest, and he say it's like a pacey striker, like a bit of an extreme example here, but like a Haaland who is going to get in behind, and you sort of slip it through with a high line, then it's tough. So it'd be interesting to see. It's very dependent on the system Lopetegui plays, and
mm.
if he has someone like Zuma next to him, maybe he'll flourish, because Zuma's obviously a good leader, he's their captain. So who knows with that sense, but I think it's very much the case that they actually might want to sign another centre back to partner Kilman. So who knows? But also, just breaking news live as we're doing this as well.
I know. I'm
Um,
trying to get it on here.
for Fabrizio Romano said that it's a here we go. We sort of knew that already. It's why we're doing the episode. As we mentioned, like it was said, he was going to have his medical, but people that sort of worship Fabrizio Romano, then
There
you've
he
got
is.
your
Here we go.
Kilman in a West Ham shirt if you wanted it. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean that was always going to be done. I mean he's having his medical in the afternoon, which is really early actually, considering
yeah.
when he was sort of like it was agreed. So like, usually sort of have it the next day. But yeah,
Mm.
as we said, I think when Kilman was sort of for me when Kilman was at the top of his game, he was sort of winning his aerial duels, really comfortable on the ball, barely gave a pass away. Very progressive with his dribbling, etc. Sort of very positive thinking, forward thinking. But I think
Mm.
when his confidence dipped, you sort of saw that just evaporate really. And I
Yeah.
think, as I've said, I've mentioned it so many times, but he was getting bullied in the air. For someone that's such a big bloke, he barely won a header when it comes to like from a goal kick, etc.
Mm.
Um, and I think it's very much the case for me that maybe you can maintain those levels at West Ham, but I'm just really happy with the fee. I'm not really, it'd be interesting to see how he does there, but it wouldn't shock me
Yeah.
if he did really well, but it also wouldn't shock me if he, is a bit inconsistent. Because if he plays a good game, I won't be like, oh my god, what a surprise. Like I know he can do that, but it's maintaining
Mm.
those levels and having a really good season, and it's an interesting one. It really is, because I think for his career, he needs to sort of get back on track because if he is to have a really good season at West Ham and sort of, he could easily be in an England contention, which he once was at Wolves. So it's an interesting one,
Definitely,
isn't it,
man.
Dan?
I
You're
I
just getting the
100% agree.
players up.
Yeah, I'm just getting the players up now. So I think that just to close on what we think about Kilman,
Yeah,
we've been very negative. We have, um, but I genuinely think this is good for Kilman. I think a good, different man. Well, not a different manager, but a manager he's familiar with in a different environment. Different staff around him, different mindset. Can't see him being captain, so you might have that weight off him, and you might see a different Kilman. Do you know what I mean? So this could still be a very positive move. And to be honest, I feel like we've spoken to West Ham communities over on Twitter, and I think they're bang on. I think this is a deal that suits both parties. So I think both parties should be happy. You're getting a centre back, which is a target, and we're getting some money which we can invest in the squad,
suits Maidenhead as
which
well.
we've needed. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, it suits Maidenhead. They get a decent
I'm
whack of
really pleased for
percentage.
them. As much as without sounding greedy, I'd love the 8 million or whatever it is as well.
Yeah,
But no, jokes aside, like it's really good for a non-league club. I think it's
100%.
6 to 8 mil maybe. If it is like nearer 20%, it'll be sort of 8 million ish. So
Mm,
fair play, that's really good money for them. So yeah, it does suit every party, and it's a really sort of interesting one because I just think it'd be really interesting to see how he does actually. But it's also, as we're going to get onto now, which I'm going to sort of build up to, it's very interesting to see who Wolves choose to replace Max Kilman when it comes to who we sign, because I'm
hmm
sure the club are already looking at a centre back. Probably been looking at one for a while, and with sort of an idea in the back of the head that if they do sell Max Kilman, after sign one. And Dan, you're going to sort of discuss it a bit more, but we're just right now going to go through three centre backs that Wolves have been quite strongly linked with. By all means, least we're not saying these are the players that Wolves are going to sign to replace Kilman. But these are sort of three players that sort of been in the press quite often, linked to Wolves, especially Elvedi, who was linked to Wolves, I think last summer and the sort of January before. Like I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we've bidded for him before. So there's
mm,
something quite advanced there type thing when it comes to we have been seriously interested in him before, and we're just going to sort of look at those players. So starting with Elvedi, I'll just give my thoughts before Dan sort of gives his opinion as well. But when it comes to Elvedi, I think he's a player that I've been really impressed with for a while. A very experienced player, especially for his age. I think he's 27 and he's already played 303. Senior games, he's probably played like I think 350 plus,
mm,
303 games for Gladbach, which is a really impressive number. Been there since 2015. Over 50 games for his country, for Switzerland. Not starting currently in the Euros because of players like Danzo and Akanji, but still sort of a mainstay in those two sides and very much quite a a modern centre back, very good on the ball, similar to Kilman. Progressive carry is really good. So I'm, a player that I've quite liked, and what I really do like about the Elvedi deal, if it was to happen, is I'm pretty sure the fee's quite cheap. I'm pretty
Mm,
sure it's. I could be completely wrong here, but roughly, I feel like it was about like 12 mil, something like that. I could be completely
mm.
wrong. It could be like
I
80,
think it
but
was like between. I think it was like between 10 and 15. I think
yeah,
it was like
exactly.
where
Like it was something like that.
around
Which
there.
at the end of the day, that's cheap for someone of his experience, and that was always the argument when we were going to sign him. People were really happy because he's an experienced player for a cheap price, and I'm certainly wouldn't be against it if Elvedi has sort of chosen to be the man. Can play left side, even though he's right footed, can play left side. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And what are your thoughts, Dan? Talk us through it. Obviously, got F breath up here, but when I've what like we're not judging it 100% off that, but I think as we've said, it does sort of speak a bit of a picture,
Yeah, yeah.
and sort of
I
highlights
think
some
it
of his
just.
really good areas, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think as you can see here, I mean, we've obviously watched footage of these three players, and a lot of this translates with the things that we're looking at. Otherwise, we wouldn't mention them. Um, he's very good in just getting the ball out of danger
Mm-hmm.
with clearances. Um, what I really like about this player, by the way, his positional awareness is probably the better out of the ones we're going to be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's just very stubborn in his role. He won't, even though he will maraud forwards, as you can see from his progressive carries, when he is in that back line and he's back against the goal, he is very stubborn. He'll get a lot of blocks and interceptions, which is really good, really, to be fair, because I feel like sometimes Wolves are guilty of backpedaling too much, like we were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
and I think that's all of our players. Well, they're not just Max Kilman, and
Mm-hmm.
not just blocking the ball at source, getting rid of the ball at source. Now, another thing I do need to talk about is he's everything I've seen about this guy. He's very good if uh, he'll win the ball off the player, but it will always be from a situation where the ball's bobbling around, and he'll just neatly collect it and move the ball on. Actually tackling players, which sounds ridiculous, but it's not really his strong suit. He's not an aggressive
Yeah.
tackler. So again, like we're going to talk about all three players, and they've all got very different attributes. So this player is
Yeah.
not very aggressive, but very neat on the ball. Not the neatest out of the three, but the best thing about this guy is his positional awareness is very good.
Yeah.
Um,
And then the
moving on to
next
the next
one
one, if
is David Carmo. I mean, for me, a player that I've sort of been following for a few years when he was at Braga, went to Porto, and then went on loan to Olympiacos for I think the latter stages. I think it was after January or something like that, where he
mm,
played pretty much every game, played 20 games, and
mm,
he won the Conference League with them as well. Played with obviously a familiar face in Daniel Podence, and a player that, as you'll sort of highlight as well, Dan. But for me, a player that is very different to the other two options that we're looking at. Very
mm,
different to Elvedi when it comes to he's a lot more aggressive, very sort of dominant in the air, whether that's sort of defending his own box or attacking. Very
mm,
sort of can pull up with a goal or two. Um,
mm,
Morley mainly though, like not necessarily his goal scoring, which is the best. It's mainly sort of his the way sort of the amount of sort of what's the word danger he sort of accumulates in the
yeah,
box. Like might not be his goals because he's not scored many goals in his career at all, but
mm,
very much the case of the threat that he does pose in the box. He might not always score, but he might win a flick on or something, that type of thing. And when it comes to
mm,
defending his own box, very quite dominant. Can be really imposing, that type of thing, and
yeah.
wins his aerial duels, which is something that apart from Dawson we don't really have. Totti, I think, is quite good in the air as well, but obviously
Mm.
Dawson, as we'll get onto as well, probably won't be playing start of the season. So you've got to have
I think
someone that is really really good in the air.
mm, I think with this guy, what's different from him and Dawson, he does win the ball in the air. He's fairly aggressive with it, but what I like is he's very good at winning the second ball, which is um something that we've lacked very, very quite a lot, to be fair. Like the amount of times where we've given a ball away in a defensive sort of position, where really the balls you just need to get rid of it, and we
Yeah,
just fart around with it too much. Um,
no nonsense. Yeah,
so he's a bit of more, yeah, exactly that, a very no nonsense defender. So again, very different from Alvedi, but definitely someone that would be a better big upgrade for us. And then the final one is the star one, isn't it? This is the
yeah,
one where we should be using that Max Kilman money, in my opinion.
yeah. I agree.
This is the one for me. Do you want to talk about Thomas Beeling?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, a player that is really good on the ball, really good with his progressive passes, um, really good like sort of the amount of touches he sort of accumulates. Largely playing into a real sort of ball dominant final side under Arnie Slot. I think he didn't necessarily start the season playing too many games, but as the season ended, he was pretty much a mainstay in that side, playing pretty much every game. Um, and he was a real sort of modern day centre back, a centre back you look at and you think, yeah, he's a top player in. And I was sort of, he'd be a player that really excites me, a
Mm,
player that I think could do really well for the club. And considering, he's not considering how good he is on the ball, you think sometimes when a player's good on the ball, they might not be an unreal defender, but he's got really good parts to his game when it comes to his aerial duels. I think it was 57% aerial duels won
mm,
last season, which isn't that bad. And lo and behold, he did play in a team where they were really dominant, pretty much dominated all their
mm,
matches. But at the same time, he's still used to playing in that system and used to being really comfortable on the ball. And for me, it'd be interesting to see what Wolves do look for. But for me, I certainly would be looking for a centre back that is really good on the ball,
yeah,
because I don't think a lot of the centre backs we have are amazing on the ball.
no,
For example, Dawson, like, as good as he is as a defender, he's our best defender in my opinion. He's not the best on the ball, and you got a
mm,
keeper that, if Jose Sá does stay, not the best on the ball. So you need sort of someone to sort of reassure everyone and just not really give the ball away. Um,
yeah,
and he's a player that really excites me. Still 23, really young age,
mm,
the youngest out of three we're looking at, and a player that I'd personally be really happy if we signed. As you said as well, Dan, I'll be spending the kill money on him as well personally.
yeah.
Um, so what are your thoughts from what you've said and what you're looking at?
Everything I've looked at this player, what I really like about him, calm headedness on the ball. Even in a very intense situation, he'll calm the ball down. You know,
Hmm.
he's a very it's really weird. He reminds me of a midfielder. He does, like the way,
Oh
like
yeah,
almost like a DM sort of thing. The way, like, he'll calm the ball down, pass the ball around. Sort of. The best thing I could say about him is he's this stat here, the progressive passes. I know we weren't going to talk about too much about stats, but everything I've seen about this player, one thing I really like about him, he's not afraid to make a risky progressive pass through the midfield, which is what we've been lacking so badly because we rely so heavily on our wing backs. We really start to go to pieces when those side areas start to get double manned and whatever. Yeah, we
yeah,
start to go into the centre then, and then it's all already too late basically. Whereas if you're making passes through the middle, which we never, rarely, very do,
hmm
we've got players that can collect the ball there, like in Joe Gomez and Lamina or Doyle or anyone really. Even Boubacar Traore, like we've got players that can collect the ball in the midfield and do something with it.
or
The amount of
Kunu dropping
times,
deep.
yeah, and the amount of times that's not been the case, and mainly the reason is because when it's collected in the defensive third, it's cleared diagonally across the pitch to a fullback that's running on. Sometimes that's led to goals, but very, very often when we've had a bit of a goal drought in games, it's actually led to then letting them have the ball, and then us having to recycle the attack again. The reason I talk so muchly and so much extensively about that is this guy's progressive passes are absolutely through the roof, as you can see, but it's actually evident in video things I've seen as well, where he's very much that player that is given the ball before anybody else in that back four, and
Hmm.
starts to
Yeah,
generate like an attack. So I'd be very positive if we sign a player that was of this caliber. I think this is the style of player that we should be going for. I don't think
I agree.
uh, uh, going for just an aggressive player is the answer. Sometimes you do need someone with a bit more of a calm head who can. And to be fair, his tackles at 77 are the highest out of the three, so he actually makes a
Yeah,
good tackle. It's just sometimes because of how much he progresses up the pitch, a bit like Kilman, he might not be in position too much. But I think that's something that Gary O'Neill will be able to iron out with players around
yeah.
him.
I think it's very much the case that is sort of percentiles in top percentiles in Europe when it comes to passing, pass completion, etc. I think it just shows how tidy he is on the ball, as we've mentioned.
Mm,
And for me, something that we don't do enough is progress the ball through the thirds quick enough.
mm,
As you said, a lot of it is out wide. It's never really through the lines. It's never direct. And a lot of the time, we are sometimes too passive. I think with this, it gives us a different dynamic from the back because let's be honest, respectfully, Jose Sarr isn't probably going to be making insane passes through the lines like Ederson. But
no.
for me, I've echoed this previously on podcasts I've done sort of before you were here, Dan. But I've said that I always want Wolves to sign a big centre back in
Mm,
similar to Newcastle signing Botman, similar to Villa signing
mm,
Pau Torres. I always wanted Wolves to sign that sort of top centre back where you think, yeah, this guy is one of the better centre backs in the league. And I
and
just
yeah.
didn't, as much as I think Dawson probably, when he was playing really well, is at the end of the day, he's getting on a bit now. So
Mm,
for me, this is the sort of type of sign I wanted us to make, even like disregarding Kilman's sale.
mm,
But now that Kilman will be sold, then it's very much the case that this is the perfect opportunity.
cool.
Also, something that I think could happen as well is it wouldn't shock me if Wolves go into the Brazilian market. You look at I think at Forest signing Murillo from Corinthians, for example. Obviously, we've already dabbled into the Brazilian market with someone like João Gomez. Really
Mm,
wouldn't shock me if Wolves look into that South American market and sort of sign a centre back from Brazil because we've sort of we've seen Wolves, scout loads in South America before, and there's some real talent there. Not just
mm,
sort of players for the future, like there's players that can go in the first team and be a real mainstay, like we've seen with
mm,
João Gomez, and
mm,
they also have a real good balance. They're naturally good on the ball because they're such good footballers in Brazil, but also
yeah.
they have that sort of aggressive side to them. So it's sort of a balance of two. So if we could
Mm,
find a centre back from sort of Brazil that could sort of be in that mould and hit the ground running, I certainly would like that as an option as well.
mm.
So what would you like that as well, Dan?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good shout. Like while we're in that market, while we've got players of that caliber in other in other parts of the pitch, I
Mm-hmm.
think why not sort of go on that market that's working. You got Joe
Yeah,
Gomez, you got Cunha. We've got players coming in like Pedro Lima and stuff as well. Like
exactly.
why
Yeah,
not
true, true.
go for that kind of market? But another thing I thought we'd talk about, which we haven't mentioned, I did mention on the last video, but I thought we'd mention on this because it's important. We're talking about defenders. Gary does want to go into a back four, and
Mm-hmm.
we haven't really seen Kilman flourish in a back four. So with Kilman sort of going away, Yerson Mosquera coming in, who's been used to playing in a back
Essentially.
four, um, and then if you get a centre back next to him, that could be a centre back partnership, couldn't it? That a back four could work in. And I
Yeah,
think
potentially.
when you think of a back four, you think, oh, okay, fair enough. That gives you the extra man. I think that extra man should be a 10,
Mm-hmm.
considering the way that we've now got an out and out number 9. We've already got players like Sarabia and Cunha that fit that 10 role really nicely.
Yeah,
And then we've got some fantastic wingers as well. So it almost all writes itself, doesn't it? The script almost writes itself. Like it's come out that he wants a back four. Mascara's coming back. We sold Kilman, who's not very good in the back four. You know, Cunha
yeah,
can now go into his ordinary role. You could also say Bellegarde could go into his ordinary role as well.
Yeah, I mean, he
Because
played as a number 8 mainly in France, but yeah, I think he could flourish because I just don't think we were getting the best out of him system wise either.
no, I
And it's an
think when we
interesting one,
played,
isn't it?
yeah, when we played
Because
against
I've
Liverpool, I think
yeah, yeah,
him as a 10 worked
done
really,
well
really
against
well.
Brighton as well. Even though he sort of played off the left more there in the cup,
Mm,
but I think there's also he's another player that we could certainly still get more out of, and we haven't seen his full potential yet in the Wolves shirt, and
no.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. But also, I think it's best way to probably end it on our captaincy discussion, won't we?
Yeah,
So
100%.
when it comes to who will be Wolves' new captain, because obviously Max Kilman has left, which you know, but it means that we have to get a new captain. And when it comes to the potential sort of candidates, I'd probably put Lamina up there, probably put Dawson up there. Some have been mentioning Cunha maybe as an option. But
Mm,
when it comes to who I would personally want as captain, I'd probably say Lamina. I just think sort of the football he's been playing at Wolves, he's been playing his best football at Wolves throughout his career. He said that the way he's sort of just flourished under Gary O'Neill. He sort of hit the ground running when he got here. Fans absolutely adore him. Does so much sort of off the pitch with the sort of Wolves Foundation. For example, the video with that
Fraser.
blind kid called Fraser, yeah, is absolutely beautiful video to watch. And he's just it seems like a top bloke, and
Mm,
also on the pitch has been reaping the rewards and been a standout for Wolves. Obviously winning
yeah.
fans player of the season. So for me, I'd probably give it Lamina, but I think there's a strong argument for Dawson. But for me,
Mm,
he might be against that because obviously 1 year left on his deal, and also he probably will miss the start of the season. So maybe that will have sort of a little tinkering in Gary O'Neill's mind. But a few people
mm,
have mentioned Cunha as well because he's sort of that younger mould. Obviously, again another real sort of fan favourite. Um, and I personally wouldn't necessarily be against that, but I just think probably makes sense for Lamine to be given it. And it's a really
mm,
interesting one actually because it's very interesting to see who Wolves give captaincy to. I'm quite looking forward to seeing who that will be. But
mm.
what are your thoughts, Dan? So who would you give captaincy to, and who do you think it could be given to?
Both answers is Lamina for me. I think he
Yeah,
deserves it after everything they went through with his family. That it takes a big bloke to come back after that. And then also get your brother in as well. I think he owes the club a lot. To be fair, I do. I think he owes the club a lot. There's a bereavement issue with his brother and everything, and got him over so he could be more with the family. And
he
then
knows how
so that,
loved he is, doesn't he?
yeah, and the fact that obviously when he was off, against Everton, the shirt came out a couple of times, and what you've got that famous
Yeah.
picture of them all in the changing rooms
Oh,
and
funny
everything.
enough, Kilman holding it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think that like that is the next step for me for Lamina. I think you saw him morally change after his Premier League route before he came into Wolves. Everyone was a bit like, oh God, we're getting the next Diego Costa who's going to cause a load of havoc. Um, for the wrong reasons, and I don't think we've had that at all. Really, I mean,
Not
even
at
when you
all.
think about the red card that he had, it was very much a stupid second
Terrible.
yellow that we still can't really get to grips with now. I don't think he's lost his head at all in any of the games
No,
from
like
what I've
at the end
known.
of
To be
the day,
fair,
nah, like at the end of the day, players get frustrated when they concede, for example. And I think that was some fans have argued that sometimes he strops a bit when we concede, but at the end of the day, he's not going to start celebrating when we concede. He's gonna be a bit annoyed, and that's natural. But it doesn't let it affect him.
for
So yeah,
me, his
we're both
performance as
set on
well
Lamina, aren't we?
against yeah, his performance against Spurs for me was Spurs at home for me was a captain's performance in my opinion.
Yeah,
When you needed someone to actually be that last man right at the
yeah,
end of the game, no one else was even thinking about that run that Sarabi was
yeah,
through when he
yeah.
was threading that pass. No one was thinking about that run. They were all knackered. It was right at the end of the game, and you're playing Spurs, but he didn't care, man. He found it
You
somewhere.
you also look at the positions he's played in when they're not. For example, had a game where he was up front, played off the
Yeah,
wing.
yeah.
He's had to do a lot of things with the club, and he's sacrificed himself to do that
Mm,
because he always says he's happy to help the team. So we're both sort of agreeing on that. It could be
Yeah.
quite a good debate actually. We'll probably do like a full video
When,
on it,
when,
but be a
when
good
it's
debate, wouldn't it?
actually announced as well, we can talk about as to
Yeah,
why,
definitely. Yeah,
you know. And I think that the Cunha situation, I don't think I would be angry, like you said, if that happened. I do
hmm
think that Lamina is more suited to it at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if Doyle had a really good season next season. I wouldn't be surprised if either Doyle or Cunha took the role. I wouldn't, because they're
yeah.
both
Because I think
players where
Boyle's managed. Fucking hell, not managed quite yet. I mean, captained.
maybe one day
Yeah, I've lost my
managing
head there.
Wolves.
Yeah, he's captained. I don't know if he captained Sheffield. I assume not because of John Egan, but
Mm.
I think he captained City 21s when he was there and 23s,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and England potentially at youth level. So he
Mm.
has captain. He's got experience of being captain, and O'Neill also has this. That's a good one actually. I didn't think of Tommy Doyle, but
He
wouldn't
seems like
shock
that
me if
kind
they
of
sort of
bloke, doesn't he?
like a young player like that because even Lamina, he's got 1 year left, I think, with an option to extend. But you could argue, he hasn't got long left either. So when it comes to his
Mm.
contract, so yeah,
Mm.
it's a weird one. As I said, it'll be a really good debate. So I'm looking forward to seeing
Don't
who Wolves
think.
pick.
I think the other thing as well. I don't
We're not
think there's
missing
many
anyone,
players.
are we? That could be.
I don't know. I don't think there's many players that if it went to, I'd angry. To be fair, I think there's like some
Fair
players
point.
that aren't great with their English and everything. So I think that would obviously always be a little bit of a problem.
Get what
Um,
are you doing if they give it Doc?
uh, I've never even
Not for
thought
you.
about it. I can't even process that. It's just a
Yeah, no.
weird thing to think about. You know,
Like
he's been out
at
for
the
the
end of the
longest
day, no,
time, comes back, and then he gets captain.
it's weird that
It's
he's still
mental.
here. But I absolutely love the bloke. But it'll be what's it called? I just don't think he'd play enough to be given captain.
I'd love it to be
I'm
Lamina. I'll be
looking.
honest. I'd be really
Yeah,
happy.
I think we're both agreeing on Lamina. Maybe my opinion would
Mm,
change, but right now it is Lamina. To be fair, it is. Yeah.
yeah, nice. Well, there's not really much more to add.
No,
Just
not
letting
at
you
all.
know, guys. If you're West Ham fans, uh, take everything that we've said, but both sides. You know, I know that we've said a lot of negatives towards Kilman, but it was one of those seasons really where the weight of the captain's armband and all these different things really sort of weighed down on him, and you saw the guy sort of bow under pressure.
Yeah,
Which is, it is unfortunate, but we have seen some really positive things about Kilman. He doesn't get the 40 million price tag for no reason. The club obviously really didn't want to lose the guy. So I think it's the best thing for all parties, and so yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments. Get involved as much as you can, guys. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything. And we're all over on social, aren't we, Matt? What's our handle?
yeah. So Wolfpack WWFC on Instagram and Twitter, and the
Mm,
Wolfpack on Facebook. So make sure you check
lovely,
us out on all there. Make sure you follow us. They're growing really
lovely,
well
nice
as
one.
well. So and
Yeah, we've
subscribe.
got
Yeah.
a
So,
load of content coming up, loads and loads of content. I know we've been doing loads as it is, but I mean, we've not even into the season yet, so expect a lot of
yeah,
content coming your way. So be subscribed
100%.
and ready for that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to add anything extra. Max
No.
Kilman's he's gone, and we're going to move on with some money and a new captain. So this should be really interesting.
Yeah.
Nice
See
one,
you later
guys. I'll see you on the next one in a bit.
in a bit.